Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're going over my essential list of VR games and experiences. So if you're a huge fan of VR or just want to know what the technology is all about, these are the experiences that you absolutely need to give a try. Now there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, and feel free to let me know down in the comments if I missed any games you consider mandatory or if there's a specific genre that you think needs a little bit more attention. For now though, let's start things off with a bunch of casual experiences. Most people should start their VR journey with games like Beat Saber and Space Pirate Trainer. These are my absolute favorite introductory titles. Space Pirate Trainer is hands down one of the best wave shooters ever made for VR. It's surprisingly strategic, extremely intuitive, and the music gets me pumped up every single time I play it. If you're looking to introduce someone to VR, this is one of the best places to start. They won't be too overwhelmed, you won't have to worry about motion sickness, and it's a game that you could quickly jump in and out of and still enjoy it every single time. On a similar note, another first stop should be Beat Saber. Once again, it's extremely intuitive and very easy to get into, but it also does an excellent job of sucking newcomers in with its fun but not overwhelming physical mechanics, a series of excellent music, and just the right amount of special effects to keep it exciting without overwhelming the user. For some people, Beat Saber is the only VR game they ever need, and between the massive soundtrack that just keeps growing, the ability to add mods to this title, and that exponential difficulty curve, this title basically has unlimited replayability. Now, if you happen to be showing off VR in a party environment, the go-to game is easily Richie's Plank Experience, but with this title, be prepared to overwhelm a lot of people. I absolutely recommend you use a real-life plank for people to walk down, but also make sure not to be a jerk and do something stupid like push anyone. While it might be really fun for the observer, one truly bad VR experience can stop someone from ever playing again. But casual games aren't for everyone, so from here we'll go through a bunch of other genres. For platformer fans, an absolute must is Moss Book 1 and 2. I personally never thought I'd enjoy a game with a mouse protagonist, but boy was I wrong. The supreme storytelling will have you absolutely falling in love with Quill, and all other aspects of this title are just top notch. There's stunning graphics, excellent combat, challenging puzzles, and I just can't get over the emotional attachment that I formed with that little virtual mouse. Now, another great platformer is Max Mustard. While I didn't end up forming the same bond with the main character, I did however enjoy the fact that this game leans a bit more into the platforming role. There's a whole bunch of different biomes, all with their own unique traps from Max to traverse through, and you could actually use the coins you find to buy Max some upgrades. I generally compare Max Mustard to one of the best VR platformers ever made, which was Astrobot on the original PlayStation VR, but since the older PlayStation titles are no longer compatible with the PlayStation VR2, I've stopped including them in videos like this. Now for tabletop fans, we have some easy recommendations. Demio was constantly being referred to as Dungeons & Dragons in VR, and while it doesn't exactly live up to that, it is however an absolutely amazing dungeon crawler tabletop experience. You get to choose from 6 different characters, all with their own unique abilities, and then you need to battle your way through multiple levels in order to go face to face with one of the game's epic bosses. This is a co-op recommended experience for 1 to 4 players, and you'll definitely need to use plenty of strategy and work together for this one. Now, the next tabletop experience I only consider essential if you're a huge board game player and you're looking for a sim of certain games like The Binding of Isaac 4 Souls. In that case, All On Board is the game for you. As of right now, it gives you the ability to play 9 distinct board games online with either your friends or random people in public lobbies. These are fully licensed replicas of games like The Hunger, Escape the Dark Castle, Binding of Isaac 4 Souls, GT Rally, Istanbul, and Terraforming Mars. Now before we move on to the next category, I just want to mention that an officially licensed Dungeons & Dragons game is actually on the way from Resolution Games, the same studio that gave us Demio. Now moving into another fairly niche genre, we have horror games. I know a lot of people can't handle horror games, and it's even worse when it comes to VR gaming. But if you want to experience the best of everything out there, your first thought should be The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. This is an excellent story-driven first-person survival title that has everything from a compelling storyline to some of VR's best combat. It's the one game where stabbing zombies never gets old. Now, if you're not a fan of the survival mechanics, and just want a dark storyline with some action, then you have to check out Lies Beneath. It feels like you're being sucked into a horror-themed comic book, and the game not only has some great shooter action, but also fantastic sound effects, and a really creepy storyline. But if you need a little backup to handle the overall horror theme, that's where you should jump into Phasmophobia. This is a 4-person co-op ghost hunting experience that has made me pee my pants out of both laughter and fear. It almost feels like you're filming your own Blair Witch Project, and you never know if a ghost experience is going to make you laugh as you see your buddy hightail it out of the house, or if the game's going to traumatize you when one of these entities sneak up and take you out. But my personal favorite video game genre are the RPGs. Sadly, when it comes to VR, this genre is lacking a bit, but you definitely have to give both Dungeons of Eternity and Legendary Tales a try. In many ways, both of these titles are very similar. There's physics-based combat, a massive leveling system, online co-op, plus tons of dungeons to explore and enemies to kill. Dungeons of Eternity, though, is more of the kid-friendly version. It's a bit lighter in the overall mechanics. There's not the same emphasis on the overall physics when it comes to combat, nor does it have the same level of complexity when it comes to player progression. Legendary Tales also has a much darker theme, and overall the game feels a lot more challenging and less forgiving. Now, unlike RPGs, a genre that is highly represented in VR is the roguelites. Now, one of the classic experiences that I think everyone should still give a try is Until You Fall. This is a truly unique fighting game that brings some one-of-the-kind mechanics to the table. You'll need to duck, dodge, block, and counter enemy attacks, and you'll also have a huge array of different weapons and special abilities at your disposal. Now, not only is this a physically intense game that'll have you sweating, it's also extremely challenging and will most likely take quite some time before you ever beat it. Now, if you want to trade the fantasy world for a little bit of a dystopian sci-fi world, we have Underdogs. Here you'll be piloting multi-ton gorilla-style mechs in some full physics-based arena-style fighting. Just like any good roguelite, there's plenty of risk versus reward mechanics, randomized enemies and loot, and everything from the game's enemies to overall storyline is just dripping with so much style. I absolutely love both Until You Fall and Underdogs, but I know if I don't mention the Light Brigade, I'm gonna hear it down in the comments. While I don't enjoy it quite as much as the other two games, it is another title with its own very unique sense of style, and this time you'll be shooting your way through a very creepy world, while also gaining some authentic World War II style weapons and an array of magical power-ups. Overall, it's still a badass title, it just didn't suck me in as well as the other two games. And speaking of games that didn't really suck me in, I'm not a fan of the overall puzzle genre, but I absolutely loved both Red Matter 2 and Wanderer. Red Matter 2 not only delivers some of the best graphics we've ever seen in VR, but it also has a truly compelling storyline and some brain-scratchingly difficult puzzles. Now, the idea of playing through a puzzle game does not excite me at all. However, I fell in love with Red Matter. The overall pacing is excellent, as the game has just the right level of challenge on its puzzles, and it's also broken up with some nice storytelling and combat. Now, Wanderer has you going on a time-traveling adventure, and it almost switches between a linear storyline and a series of extremely challenging escape rooms. The overall production value is absolutely fantastic on this one, but if you are interested in trying out this game, just give it a few more weeks because the remake is on its way. Now, another game genre that isn't at the top of my list are the racing and flight sims. Once again though, thanks to the power of virtual reality, I absolutely fell in love with both Gran Turismo 7 and Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, I have nothing against racing games and flying games, they just rarely keep my attention. But honestly, there is just something special about both of these titles. Not only does GT7 look absolutely amazing, but it's one of the closest things you can absolutely do besides actually getting on a track with a real-life car. It absolutely delivers an adrenaline rush. Now, Microsoft Flight Simulator, on the other hand, doesn't deliver that same type of adrenaline, but it could be even more stunning. If you ever found yourself captivated by something like Google Earth, imagine that times 1,000. It's utterly insane how realistic those games are getting, and it gives you a chance to explore the world unlike anything else. Now, the next series of games we'll call the social experiences. If you want to experience everything that VR has to offer, you definitely need to jump into games like Rec Room, VR Chat, and I'm sorry to say it, Gorilla Tag. There's a reason why these games have been around for so long and they're so popular, and it's because they just tap into something we enjoy so much. Having a virtual world that you could just jump into and leave your real life behind, while meeting up with your buddies and playing some fun games, or even just hanging out in a very specific niche community. This is what these social titles offer up, and they all deliver it in their own unique way. Rec Room is obviously very kid-friendly, focusing on more casual and co-op games, plus some competitive experiences, and lots of user-generated content. VR Chat is more of where you can disappear into your own virtual world and make it as strange or mundane as you'd like to see. And Gorilla Tag is for little kids that want to do Arm Day while yelling at each other and being quite racist. Now, I'm sure that endorsement helped to sell the game for you guys. Maybe instead of Gorilla Tag, you want to check out their new title, Orion Drift. Now, another aspect that makes VR so special is the games that heavily focus on physics, and here titles such as Bone Lab and Blade and Sorcery are unmatched. Now, I considered putting Blade and Sorcery into RPGs, but at its core, it's a physics-based arena fighter, and that's where it shines the most. They did add an amazing amount of single-player content with a bit of a progression system, but honestly, going around and decapitating people or blasting through them with some unique spells is what makes this game so good. And in a similar fashion, both Boneworks and Bone Lab does this, but with more modern weapons. At times, it'll feel like you're running through the Matrix as you leap from building to building and slow motion kill your enemies. But once again, at its core, what makes this game so damn good is the overall physics system. Yes, it's janky, and sometimes it's unintentionally hilarious, but that's just part of the overall fun. Now, a genre that I constantly hear that people are looking for in VR is anything open world. Unfortunately, there's not that much in this category, but the easy recommendation is No Man's Sky. Not only was this game the comeback king that went from a really rocky launch to an absolutely amazing content-rich title that keeps giving us more and more, but they also somehow managed to get this working pretty darn well in VR. If you could get it to run smooth, it's absolutely stunning, and there is so much to do between planetary explorations, crafting, alien encounters, dogfights, and there's even a full storyline if you don't get lost along the way. Now, another survival title that I highly recommend that's a bit more grounded is Medieval Dynasty. No aliens or firefights here, just you trying to make a new life for yourself during medieval times. You'll hunt animals, gather resources, build up your own property, and yes, this game does have a full single-player storyline, plus they've also recently introduced Sandbox and co-op modes. But if you want your survival game to be set in a dark dystopian future, we have Into the Radius. Similar to something like Stalker, this game has some of the best overall environmental storytelling, and it does an excellent job to keep you feeling isolated and stressed out in this ultra creepy, anomaly-filled world. It's an unforgiving title where you need to scrounge for all of your resources. Failure to maintain your weapons will have them jamming or breaking at the worst possible moment, and you never know what exactly you're going to run into while you're out there in the wasteland. But if you want to slow things down a little bit, I have a series of strategy games that I highly recommend. The first is a very simple turn off your brain and enjoy life type of game called Little Cities. You'll be building up some cities on a series of cute little islands. It's fairly easy, instantly gratifying, and I don't know why, but it just sucks me in for hours at a time. Now, if you prefer to keep your brain turned on and are looking for a serious challenge, Cities VR will do its best to test your resource management skills. This is a VR version of Cities Skylines, and the title does not hold back at all when it comes to complexity. I found it hard to build a city that wasn't polluted, had the ability to keep the lights on, and the citizens had an IQ above room temperature. Even running this game with unlimited money, I still somehow managed to fail quite often. So if you're up for more of a challenge, go check out Cities VR. But if you prefer strategic turn-based combat, Triangle Strategy is the #1 go-to game. This is another flat to VR port, and it's done extremely well and also delivers the entire 40+ hour game. There's an extremely deep storyline here, and combat will eventually get very challenging. If you're a fan of old school turn-based RPGs, definitely put this game on your list. And speaking of putting games on your list, Civilization 7 is actually coming to the Quest headset in the near future. I can't comment on it just yet, but it's definitely something to look forward to. Now, I'm still planning to talk about the best exclusive titles for each platform, but before that, let's get into a new category, the mixed reality games. Now, titles are still definitely in their infancy here, but there are a few games that are really easy to recommend, like the shooter Spatial Ops. In single player mode, it's a whole new take on the on-rails shooter. You are carried throughout the world like normal, but it also has this really cool aspect where portals randomly open in all directions, and you need to be prepared to spin around or look straight up and fight enemies wherever they may be. Now, things get even cooler in their multiplayer mode, where you get to turn your real-life environment into one giant battleground. The game will scatter weapons throughout the room, and then you're free to battle it out in Team Deathmatch or Capture the Flag gameplay modes. It feels almost like playing paintball or a good old-fashioned game of laser tag. Now, if you want to turn your room into a spaceship and experience a cute little story, we have Starship Home, an accidental package delivery that may start in your living room, ends up as an epic journey where you'll need to save the whole universe. And last, before we move into VR's big exclusive titles, we just gotta go over the shooters. This category is absolutely stacked, and I'm just gonna blast through some games by mentioning their flat screen counterparts. Pavlov is 100% Counter-Strike. It has those same unique gameplay modes that were added over time by the mod community, and yes, there's a ton of insane mods out there. Breachers is your Rainbow Six Siege type of game, where the combat is highly strategic, you need to rely on your teammates, and you have an array of gadgets at your disposal. Contractors is a Call of Duty style shooter, but one thing that makes this game absolutely fantastic is the fact that the mod community has recreated games like Battlefront, Titanfall, and many others. We have Population 1, which is basically like VR's Fortnite. It's a free-to-play battle royale title with multiple different modes, and they've also added a sandbox so you can create whatever you want. And finally, we have Ghost of Tabor, which is your extraction style shooter. Now, there's also a bunch of other shooters out there that deserve some credit. After the Fall is similar to Left 4 Dead. It's a great co-op experience. Hyperdash is a free-to-play arena-style shooter that I absolutely love. And there's also Onward for the military sim fans. Now, moving into the best exclusive titles, we'll start with the Meta Quest. Absolutely everyone needs to give Batman Arkham Shadow a try, as it's not just a great Batman VR game, but overall it's a fantastic title in the entire Arkham series. So if you enjoyed anything like Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, you'll definitely love Arkham Shadow. The Quest also has a massively epic role-playing game, Asgard's Wrath 2. There's easily 100 hours of content, plus a never-ending rogue-like mode. It's got top-notch graphics for the Meta Quest, the production value is extremely high, the voice acting cast is absolutely incredible, and I love the combat. Now, for the stealth fans out there, you also need to try Assassin's Creed Nexus. They did an excellent job recapturing what makes that flat series so good, and it also feels great to experience many of that game's mechanics like the parkour or stealth kills from a brand new perspective. And the easy last pick is Resident Evil 4. I don't care how many times you've played this game before, and on what platform. You need to replay it in VR. It's still familiar enough to feel nostalgic, but also feels like a completely different game played from this perspective. Now, the Resident Evil games continue as we move into PlayStation VR2 exclusives. There's a brand new Resident Evil 4 remake, which gives you all the greatness of the original title with modern day graphics, so obviously you need to give that a try. Additionally, there's Resident Evil 8, which is absolutely stunning and terrifying in VR. There are definitely some bone-chilling moments, but there's plenty of action that prevents this from just turning into a straight-up horror game. Now, if Resident Evil isn't your style, you definitely need to check out Horizon Call of the Mountain. Now, I wish the game would have pushed into a little bit more of a deeper storyline, but that is my only complaint. Everything else is absolutely phenomenal. The graphics are stunning. I finally found the VR game that made climbing entertaining, and battling all these robotic creatures from a first-person perspective is way better than any combat the flat-screen games ever offered up. And last up in platform exclusives, we have some great PCVR games. The obvious first one is Half-Life Alyx. Easily the highest production value and best graphics out of everything VR, but it also offers up fantastic storytelling, plus adrenaline-inducing combat. Nearly 5 years later, and HLA still remains one of the best VR games ever made. But in terms of sheer storytelling and overall graphics, I absolutely love the Lone Echo series, which should have been a routine space mission, turns into a bizarre time-traveling journey to save humanity. Every time I think about this game, I'm also forced to face the fact that Ready at Dawn has shut its doors, and we'll never get another game from them. They were the same amazing studio that gave us Echo VR, and I hope by some magic a part of that team returns and they deliver yet another masterpiece. And speaking of masterpieces, we do need to include some mods. It only makes sense that a great game also has a fantastic mod, and I'm talking about Return to Rapture for Half-Life Alyx. Return to Rapture takes official assets from the BioShock series and brings them into some brand new Half-Life Alyx levels. You'll find plasmoids to experiment with, a couple new enemies to battle against, and there's also some excellent storytelling and a faithful recreation of the world of BioShock. And continuing with everything Half-Life Alyx, you also need to try the standalone mod for Half-Life 1 and the PCVR version of Half-Life 2. Not only is the mod done so well that they feel like native titles, these games still hold up today. And on that note, there's a bunch of older games that have mods like Doom 3, which are worth checking out. But the mod that absolutely takes the cake for me is an overhaul mod for Fallout 4. If you're a fan of Fallout, you owe it to yourself to try Gingus's Essential Mod Overhaul. By the time you're done, it doesn't even feel like Fallout 4 anymore. I found the storyline of that game goofy and hard to take serious, but in a first-person perspective with upgraded graphics, I found myself completely sucked in. Everything from rad roaches to mole rats are absolutely terrifying, and you absolutely feel like you're trapped in a desolate wasteland. Go try it right now, guys. It is a bit of a pain in the ass to get installed and running right, but once you do, it's 100% worth it. And that's that, guys. If you've tried everything on this list, you basically know everything that VR has to offer. You know the best of the best, and I'll give you my Mateo stamp of approval. Now, if you're just looking to broaden your VR horizons, I recommend you play anything I mentioned. If there was something you think I should have included, let me know down in the description, or just give me any overall feedback on this video. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. Okay guys, I'll see you on next time.